Today folks, we're down in the town of Burin on the Burin Peninsula, southern Newfoundland. It's a foggy day. We're going to tour around and see what we can find. Coastal life. As with most places in Newfoundland, people settled in Burin because it's close to the sea and rich fishing grounds. The town of Burin is located in a sheltered inlet with a harbour protected by islands from the furious Atlantic Ocean. It is also close to forests which supplied material for houses, boats, wharves, and stages. These islands include Great Burin, Little Burin, and Stepaside. All of these islands were abandoned in line with the government's resettlement plans. The photo on the left is of Great Burin before the 1929 tsunami. On the right, Great Burin Island is seen from the far side of where we're standing now. Schooners anchored side by side. Burin Harbour was once so full of boats people could hop from vessel to vessel the entire way across. Taken in the 1880s, these pictures show cod drying on row upon row of fish flakes. Before mass refrigeration came to Newfoundland, fish would be laid out to dry in the sun and salted for preservation. Good day.
How are you?
I'm great, and you? Oh, that's okay. I'm just out touring around, my first time down in Burin.
Oh, he's fine. What's your name?
My name is Doug.
My name is Earl. It's nice to meet you, my buddy.
Nice to meet you, Earl.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I hope I ain't interrupting you now.
No,
That's back in the disaster time back in 1929.
Yeah.
That was hit by the tsunami. That used to be with Bill Island one time.
yeah?
Yeah, there used to be houses over there, big tsunami. Used to have earthquake in the old Florida, and all of a sudden, big wave comes from the houses over.
Wow.
That's a true story, yeah.
So Earl is saying there's a whole bunch of houses over here before the 1929 tsunami. And tsunami. Yeah. He's telling me there was houses all along that edge there, but the tsunami wiped everything out. So guys, the sign is a little bit weathered from being by the ocean here, but on November 18th, 1929, a 7.2 magnitude earthquake occurred on the Grand Banks, just 256 kilometers from the Burin Peninsula. It was recorded as far away as Portugal and New York, and triggered a tsunami which ravaged the coast. Damages were estimated to be $1 million, the equivalent of roughly $15 million in 2020. Even worse, 28 people along Newfoundland's south coast were killed. Malcolm Mercer Hollett was the magistrate in Burin at the time. He was in charge of managing and distributing aid which was pouring in from Canada, Britain, and the US. He was first to announce the disaster to the outside world. Relief supplies in St. John's headed for the Burin Peninsula. You can see the old trucks with Burin Relief on the side of it. Here's one of the houses got washed into the ocean. Magistrate Hollett writes in his plea for help, "A great tidal wave has swept our coast from Point May to Rock Harbour. In Point O'Bra, all is desolation. Everything is gone. There are not 5 barrels of flour in the place, and no coal." The Burin area felt an earthquake shock at about 5 p.m. on November 18th, 1929. A man was passing with 2 buckets of water. He laid them down, and the water appeared to move as though it was being boiled. Frances Kelly's kerosene lamp flickered wildly. Her dishes rattled. Her kettle on the stove jumped. Her daughter Dorothy said, "What's that, Mommy?" more curious than afraid. It was 2.5 hours before the tidal wave came, catching people unaware of what was happening around them. Before the wave came, Rocky Harbour was completely dry, and everyone went to the beach to see what was going on. All the boats and schooners were on their sides. But when it came in so fast. Giant waves smashed the coast at 40 kilometers an hour. Sea levels swelled to between 3 and 27 meters above normal. The harbour from end to end was strewn with wreckage of every description. And here a schooner is pulling a house back into the harbor that was swept out to sea. Wow. So this is the site of a major tsunami in 1929, you guys. Here's another view of the bay, guys. And just spoke with these lovely ladies and their husbands. They're from here, but they're living in BC and they just moved back. They just subscribed to the channel. Thank you for your support. It was nice to meet you girls. And I'm going to show you the road I just came up. Get up here. It is super narrow and crazy blind hills. Should have the GoPro strapped onto the front of the car for these ones. Look how narrow this road is here, guys. People are built right on the cliff. Super blind hill. Nice little salt box house getting renovated there. Smash a like button, you guys. This place is gorgeous. I think I might have to go over there behind that church. And here, folks, we got the Hiram Masonic Lodge number 3. Consecrated September 7th, 1869, here in Burin. And here, folks, we got a house shaped like a boat. It's the Tom Cody house. Vessel, ship, boat, house. Let's have a closer look. Hit the like button if you like boat houses. Houses made into boats. Got an anchor and everything, guys. The Newfoundland flag flying proud on the front. Wow. It's very unique, artistic. We got a little bit of decoration in front of this house, and then we got the Union Hall. The old Union Hall. Local 1250. Apparently there's lots to see here in Burin, guys. Smash the like button, subscribe so you don't miss these important videos. Me touring the world. Deep Dive Survivor. Out on the scene once again. I'm parked at the top of someone's driveway here at Rocky Lane here, guys. So you gotta park at the top and walk down. We got 3 houses here on Rocky Lane. Some of the best views. Some old fishing stages down here. Alright, folks, so we got a Volkswagen Bug on top of a mountain here, and it's got a wind up mechanism on the back, and it's got moose antlers on the front. Check that out, you guys. Folks, we got the Burin Museum here. Got a couple of old buildings across the road here as well. It's the Burin Heritage House. Let's see if we can get in. Well, unfortunately, the Heritage House seems to be closed today. Looks like they've done some renovations here recently. They do have a couple of interesting things here on the outside. Trademark Miroku Factory Company Limited, Yokohama, Japan. This is a whaling gun. 90mm whaling gun. That's what they would load the harpoon in here and go hunt whales. That would be mounted on the front of a whaling ship. They got a little amphitheater set up here. Got the old Bank of Nova Scotia. This is supposed to be a museum too, I believe. Let's see if we can get in there for a look. Burin Heritage Craft Shop. Open Monday, Friday, 9 to 5. And these are all salt cod fillets. Good day. I'm great, and you? My name is Doug. I got a YouTube channel called Deep Dive Survivor.
Okay.
Is it okay if I make a little video while I'm here?
Yes.
Awesome.
Did you need any help with anything? It was constructed in originally 1910, and then later on it was built on top of there. So there's an additional 2 stories above us,
Okay.
where the bank manager and his family used to live. Because this was back in a time, of course, when there weren't any roads from here to anywhere. So that being said, all this was like the bank and teller area. We have it now as a gift shop. We still have a number of artifacts down here though. So back this way in the corner, we still have the original bank vault.
Okay.
It's over here. And you're welcome to come inside and take photos and things.
Wow.
So the door, you can come here and feel how heavy the doors are. They felt they made them pretty robust back in the day.
Yeah.
So this was the smaller safe that they would cash fishermen's checks out of when they would come up from the wharf.
Okay.
And then the one here, so that one's a little bit even more robust, was where they used to keep valuable items. You know, if you had any heirloom jewelry or anything like that, they would hold on to it here for you.
Okay. Wow. And this is from
Originally 1910, but I think let me just double check now and make sure my facts are straight. They don't call us interpreters for nothing. 1919.
Okay.
That's when the final structure was built.
Wow.
Over this way we have some information on the holiday from November 18th, 1929.
Okay.
It was, have you heard anything about it at all?
Just from reading the sign out in the cove there.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, overall there were 27 lives lost.
Okay.
I'm not going to say the most devastating losses because obviously human life is very valuable, but in all of the communities around the Burin Peninsula, there were a few that were very hard hit. When the first wave came in, it took all of their winter provisions, fuel for fires, and a lot of them ended up homeless, and it was actually 3 days before anybody else found out that Burin had suffered this tragedy. So it was only when the SS Portia came into port here and realized the devastation, and so they sent out transmissions saying that, you know, there was devastation and loss here. So, and soon after that, they sent us a check. The first one was $50, so that's actually on the other side here.
Okay.
Here, right there, actually.
So this check was the first one written for the relief
Yes.
after the tsunami.
That's right.
December 12th, 1929. $50.
Yes.
Wow.
Well, I did go quite a ways. In the meantime, communities like Port de Bras, so the way that the water came in, came up through Burin Reach. So there's open water out there, but then there's an island. So the water was kind of channeled through in between there. And then on the other side, there's Port de Bras, which comes into sort of a little cove. And there was nothing to break the water from completely devastating that community. So one of the first things that they came out with, aside from monetary assistance and sending out other provisions, were relief logs, which here you'll see. So obviously being so late in the year and so close to winter, you can see snow on some of the hills there in the background of those photos. You know, there was also a winter storm that happened the night of the tidal wave, so there were
Double whammy.
Oh yeah.
Wow. And so relief logs, that was to start reconstruction and give fuel again for winter warmth?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so in some of the stories that we like to tell here, I always go and do these out of order, so I apologize for So some of the stories that we tell, now Margaret Saint was, she was living in Lord's Cove at the time, which is further south down this side of the peninsula. Her family, she was in her home getting ready for bed, from what I understand, upstairs of a 2 or 3 story home, that's unclear. But her mom, baby brother, and 2 older siblings were downstairs. Baby brother was getting supper. The older kids were just playing in the living room. And when the first wave struck, now Margaret doesn't remember any of it, but apparently her father was up the hill playing cards with family friends and watched the whole thing happen. And of course, there's nothing you can do against a wall of water. In the end, after the 3rd wave passed and they deemed it safe to go down and check things out, they found Margaret unconscious in the mud outside of the home. And the rest of her family, unfortunately, was deceased. So with every tragic story we also have a very heroic and uplifting one. Pearl Hatfield was, so she was only 4 or 5 years old, I think, and she lived on one of the islands out here.
Okay.
And so when the first wave came, it picked her house up off of the foundation and brought it over to this side, to one of the beaches. And now Pearl slept through that part of it.
Yeah.
When her mother finally woke her, and I was just brushing up on this yesterday, when her mother finally woke her, they were partway across the bay going back with the 2nd wave, brought them back to the beach near where their home started out. And the neighbors saw this happening, so they came out and to see if they could help. And Pearl's mother actually beat through the living room window and passed her children out one by one to the neighbors.
Wow.
Yeah, we actually have, there was a cradle in the top of their house. The 3rd wave swept the house out to sea.
Wow.
But we had a number of schooners in the harbor that were relatively undamaged. So it was the SS Daisy that brought their home back to shore, and with the cradle in the upstairs bedroom, which we have upstairs now as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and there's plenty more. I've heard of a young family. There's a ton of books written about it. Some of them have, like, there was a young family, young man and woman. They had 2 small children, and their house too was picked up off the foundation. But when they came back to land, he tucked them one under each arm and made a jump for it, and his wife followed, and so they also survived.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this happened in the middle of the night, was it?
It was. So the actual earthquake happened at about 4 o'clock p.m., so still daylight. And then the tidal wave came at roughly 7 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So one of my favorite stories is actually down this way around the corner. this is our diving suit. Now, divers were employed by Fishery Products, which is now Fishery Products International, to repair or make any underwater repairs to boats and other underwater structures. So they've been employed by Fishery Products since about the 1850s. The very first diver was named Dave Dobbin. Now, this suit here that you see was a 280-pound lead belt with some lead shoes to match to keep them, on the sea floor. Plus, the helmet was pretty heavy as well. But it was always a very strong, wiry man inside the suit.
Yes.
They weren't built very big back then. So, but they would carry the weight of the suit. And there were always a team of 2 people on shore to pump the air because, of course, there was no compressed air at the time. So they would have 2 guys because this motion would get pretty repetitive after a while. So they would have the 2 on there. They'd have another 1 or 2 on the radio. It was a one-way radio that had a little speaker inside the helmet. And that's how they would communicate with him. And there were only 3 signals that he could communicate with via rope. So he would have 1 tug of the rope means less air, starting to float here, or 2 tugs was more air please, I'm starting to get lightheaded, and 3 tugs was there's a problem, please get me out of here. Back in the 1850s, it became apparent pretty early in the days of the diver that they were going to be useful for other things. So in this case, with Dave Dobbin, there were a lot of issues at the time with immigrants coming across illegally, but some ship captains would take payment and then take these people who were looking for a better life on the other side of the ocean. And then they would sink the ship, right? So it still happens to this day. So in this particular case, it was 1855. There was a boat full of Dutch immigrants on their way across, and the captain and crew ran the ship aground and sunk the ship, but the crew got off, most of the crew. So they had come into Burin. They said, our ship sank, we had loss, we'd like to just go home now. And then probably about a month later, the people of St. Lawrence and Burin and everywhere in between were saying, where are the bodies? Usually we've seen something by now when there's that kind of a loss. So they sent Dave Dobbin out there to investigate underwater, and the first thing he sees when he gets down to the wreck site is a woman tied on to the front of the ship. So immediately 3 tugs. He came up, definitely foul play. So after some discussion, he went back down to investigate further. And he found 76 passengers inside, trapped inside the cabin of the ship.
Oh my goodness.
Now the lady who was tied on outside, she was actually one of the crew originally, but she was not happy or content to follow through with this plan that they had come up with. So they sank her with the ship as well. Now, in time, went through extensive investigation and trying to track these people down, they did eventually catch up with all of them, and they did serve their time. But just the fact that that was something that needed to be done routinely enough. Do you know what I mean? It's
wow.
It's incredible, and the fact that it still happens now in different places.
Wow, that is really cool. I'm a diver myself.
Are you?
And this is really, really interesting.
Well, the fun parts about it are, this is Mr. Willis Mayo, and then his son, Lloyd Mayo. Yeah, so Mr. Willis and Lloyd.
Lloyd here?
No, right here in the center.
Oh, okay, yeah. There's Willis's son, Lloyd.
Yeah, so they're the ones who wore this suit, which was active between the 40s and 60s. And then down here, more recently, this is Winston Hollett. So he's gifted us quite a bit of information and photos through his lifetime.
Wow. And these are cups that were found in a shipwreck?
They were found at the bottom, or rather on the ocean floor by Winston.
Canadian National Railways.
Yeah. So we have no idea really where they came from, but aside from Canadian National Railways, it could have been anybody who was on a train and then brought it with them.
So here's the radio they use to communicate with the divers. Wow. Tender volume, tone, continuation, diver volume, diver cable, listen and talk. It's a diver's amplified telephone. Wow. Really, really neat. Look at the ice build up on the vessel. Hey, should we go upstairs?
Oh yeah, so how much do you want to know about the fish plant?
Just a little.
There's quite a bit, but basically in the early 80s, after things started to centralize more towards Maritime, because Burin was once the economic center of the Burin Peninsula, but as commodities like roads and paved roads specifically came in and around, Burin was a little bit further removed from that than, say, Marystown, which was easier to access by road. So as they were centralizing things that way, the fish plant shut down, and well, it was a huge upheaval for the town, because I think there were somewhere to the tune of 450 people employed out there, plus whatever whatever supports they were given to families and stuff. So there were a number of things that happened. There were picket lines, there were a lot of back and forth, there was a lot of stress around it. There was, I'm sure there was a priest somewhere that was praying for a resolution. But when Fishery Products came back to the fish plant facility to pick up the rest of their product, they had a picket line to deal with, which had to be removed. I believe it was 7 days later. There was a court order. So when the trucks finally got in, Lou Bailey, who was the mayor at the time, he got a call from somebody, and then he said, I think we're going to have an emergency excavation order out there. So what they did, he said that it was a water main break, and dug up the driveway in front of the fish plant. So then they were trapped in there, and I think it took another week or so before they actually had to fill in the hole and let the trucks back out.
Wow.
So, crafty guys, yes.
Yeah. The fishermen are not to be messed with.
No, that's right. Or their mayor, apparently.
Yes.
Don't know that he ever fished, but... this area here, so these are some photos from the community. Further up top, they're mostly churches that we had in the area, in community buildings.
Wow.
Now up here we have mostly from Heritage Square. So this house is just kind of out around the hill here. This here it's up on the hill behind us, looking down into what we call Hollittstock. So this was Hollitt's fishery premises and their home, as well as their department store. The old courthouse is there. And then up this way, we think there used to be a window here, because this is what the view would have looked like from this vantage point back in 1836.
Okay.
Taken by one of the children that used to live here.
Wow. And here's the building we're in right now.
Yes.
Marine Railway Dock, Ship Cove. It was built from the proceeds of a lottery. The site was where the old Spurrier and Company had their shipyard, which ran from 1718 to 1826.
This is a shot from Collins Cove, which is just across the harbor here.
Wow, really nice schooners.
We, at times, would have had anywhere between 100 and 120 schooners, each equipped with 4 to 8 dories at any given time during the height of the fishery.
Okay.
So these are fishery premises. Anybody with ice stores or fish processing facilities. And in here, this is our manager's room. So this space is dedicated to the people who work in the fishery or otherwise supported it with other industry. So we had sailmaking, we had ship repair and building. There were a number of things that kind of kept things running smoothly around here, or as smoothly as you could expect when the ocean is where you spend your life. This item here came out of the captain's quarters of the ship, so it's actually a little water basin. So they had water access here, but then in here there's a lip inside the sink, because of course when you're on the ocean you're always rocking back and forth, so that little lip in there would
Kept
keep
the
it
water,
from sloshing out all the time. Yeah.
Awesome. And here's some marine lanterns. Sorority of United Fishermen.
Yeah, there were a number of groups around at that time, so in the even mid-1700s up until the mid-1900s nearly. We had the Fishermen's Guild, there was very active stonemasons, and there's one more, Sons of Temperance.
Okay.
Yeah, so they would often congregate, the Sons of Temperance had a vow of sobriety. They believed that anything that would, could potentially alter the mind could potentially do it permanently.
Okay.
And over here we have some of the gadgets and technology used back in the day. One piece in particular, the harpoon log. So this was something that they would kind of toss overboard. It would be hooked on with a rope. This would spin, and then it would track the speed and distance using these dials. Now this one was created in 1861. But we still use a very similar model today. So the same shape with the fins back here, the same dials up top. They're just in different locations.
And so this would tell them how far they're shooting their harpoon? Or?
No, sorry, I should have clarified. It's so it's not a weapon or anything.
Okay.
It's just to track how their speed and distance in the water as a vessel.
Oh, okay.
They were just shaped like a harpoon. It wasn't...
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a measuring device for sailing.
Yes.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Catch your cod with these ones.
My dad still uses those.
Yeah?
Yeah. And there are actually a number of youth too that they'll go squid jigging off of the wharf down here in Shipco, and this is what they use to jig their not calamari, squid.
Squid, yeah. Calamari's once it's cooked.
Yeah, no, I was thinking the French word.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of these things are still kind of in use, and just because the design of it was meant to be simple but effective. If you weren't simple but effective 300 years ago, you probably perished.
Yeah.
We didn't have anybody overwinter here in the Burin area until the mid-1700s. There was not much dirt to even grow vegetables with, so they would often pull dirt together from different places, enough so that they could grow a few root vegetables like potatoes, carrots, and turnip.
Okay.
So all the green that you see outside is relatively new here. even back in the 90s, there's a notable difference between the landscape in the 90s here in Burin, which was still fairly rocky, to now, where we just have an abundance of foliage.
There's a sea chest.
So in here we have our veterans room. I'll tell you more about those videos there in a minute. I'm not sure if you'll be able to videotape them. But, so in here, dedicated to the heroes of World War I and II, and all of these supporters as well. So not necessarily military, but the people in the community who really came together to keep people safe, and to help reclaim what was lost during that time.
Okay. First Newfoundland Regiment, the Great European War, 1914. This certifies that John S. Bugden has laid down his life for king and country. November 1917.
Now, the First World War, there were already a few generations of Newfoundlanders here, so people had relocated from Europe and settled here. So some of those third and fourth generation Newfoundlanders weren't all that interested in fighting for king and country. They kind of were like, that's a little bit your problem and not so much ours. But then when the German army had overtaken Belgium and they were advancing into France, that was kind of where they drew the line in the sand. And so we had a number of people enlist and were sent overseas. And that was one of the most, what's the word I'm looking for? I'll just read it off the paper. So no other of the imperial forces by any other overseas contingent suffered such a proportion of casualties. So out of our 6,859 Newfoundlanders that were enlisted, 1,300 were killed and 2,314 were wounded.
Wow.
You'll also see here, so there's the female uniform there from Canadian military. So she was stationed in Halifax, this lady. And just for contrast, this Air Force uniform over here was from the Newfoundland Regiment. So they had their own Air Force, a little bit scratchier material, so not quite as good quality as that Canadian one over there. But I always like to point out that difference because Newfoundland wasn't actually part of Canada until 1949.
Yeah. We joined Confederation in 49. But before that, we were the Republic of Newfoundland, right?
I wasn't sure if, I've been trying to get some clarity on that because I'm not sure exactly where the Republic of Newfoundland came from as a place name.
Okay.
Because we were a colony of Britain.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I haven't gotten that far yet to look into those details.
Okay. Probably a lot of people consider to be more independent maybe, and that's why they're calling it Republic.
Yeah, well, we do have our own way of doing things, and as the island that's out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, it's certainly isolating at times. So, in terms of certain commodities, it can be hard to get them here on the island, particularly if there's a shortage on the mainland. So that's when we feel it the most.
Yeah.
So toilet paper during COVID, anyone?
Yeah. Shrapnel helmet.
I'll give you kind of a brief what's going on right here. So we do have a number of interviews that we have on disc, and we have our school flat screen TV that has a DVD player in the back. So it's almost an artifact itself. But so we had a number of interviews. There are some discs with photos on here. We also have a copy of High Tide in Newfoundland, which we purchased with the appropriate license from the National Film Board. I originally came across the video because there was a clip of St. Lawrence and Burin playing a game on the old soccer field just up the road here. And I have family from St. Lawrence who played on the team. So I was seeing this in my feed because my family was sharing it. So when I tracked it down, though, I realized that there's a lot of footage from Burin back in 1950, 1951. Just like in colorized. So there's this whole pan section like where they're looking at Hollitt Stock and then the courthouse and the bank and the Heritage House. And so it was just a very cool, things that were happening in Burin in 1950.
Wow. And what would this be, a fire alarm?
Yeah, that would have been from one of the fire halls. I can't remember how it works. Open then pull down hook. There was something about it. I think there was a phone line in there at one time.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so you would pull down on that and then, the phone would be in there.
Okay.
So then in here's our school bin. So pretty typical even into the late 60s and 70s. With the cursive writing on the wall, that's always one of the things that people talk about the most. I know cursive writing, my kids know cursive writing. It's, it is a dying art though. There are lots of people who aren't familiar with it. But we have in here also, there's a cradle. So this is a cradle I mentioned downstairs from the Brushett family home that was swept out to sea. They actually went on to rock one more infant in there after the tidal wave disaster. But it's up in this room because there were times when teachers were also responsible for looking after smaller children. So that's why it's here in our schoolroom. Now in this room, two of my favorite stories. One, the potbelly stove over there. So there are lots of gentlemen who talk about when they were younger, they used to sneak out and stuff the chimney with straw so that when they lit the stove in the morning, they would fill the schoolhouse with smoke and everybody would get the day off. So
that's a good way to get a day off.
Yeah, right? We're so inventive. But my other favorite story that I feel always deserves a little bit of a highlight is a young gentleman who was 17 years old named Gerald Hollett. In 1944, there was a schoolhouse up the road and around the corner, and so the teacher was teaching her classes. The wood stove was going because it was cool enough outdoors, they needed that going. She had 50 students in her classroom, in her one-room classroom. Now, whatever way the building was laid out, there was only one exit, and the wood stove was right next to that exit. At some point, the wood stove fell over in front of the door, and so there was no way out, and it went up in flames immediately. Now, the teacher herself, she tried to pick up the stove, but she just wasn't strong enough to do it. And at that point, to read her account of things in one of her interviews we have downstairs, she was just like kind of relented to the whole, okay, well now I need to help these children through this awful experience, which is when Gerald Hollett showed up. He came and he picked up the stove with his bare hands. He was badly scarred. He had those scars for the rest of his life, but he managed to pick that up, put out the fire, save the teacher, all 50 of her students, and the schoolhouse.
Wow.
And so for his efforts, he was awarded the Gilt Cross. So this is his award here, and Gerald Hollett there.
This guy picked up a flaming red potbelly stove to save the teacher and 50 children. Heroic action.
Yeah, it's
Really
incredible.
neat.
He did, I've learned since I heard about his story that as an adult, people didn't always think very highly of him because he was a bit slow, or I don't know exactly what the issue was there, because it's all just hearsay, things that you get from the community. But I always make sure to tell his story because I feel like he deserves so much more than that.
Wow.
Kind of really veering off the diving topic.
Yeah.
Well, wait till you see where I take you next. So up here, this is our wall of women. Women throughout Canadian history, so not just in Newfoundland. But I always highlight these two ladies. So these are our local ladies. Kathy Dunderdale was our first female premier here in Newfoundland, and actually is still the only female premier here. And Jessie Butler was the first female elected to Burin Town Council. So we've got lots of familiar faces. So Therese Casgrain there, Manon. There is a proportionately large number of women on these walls from Quebec.
Strong women in Quebec, you're saying?
Pioneers there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. They had a few different challenges to contend with, language barriers on top of, the regular things that we deal with.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So up here we have, this is our communications room. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
And then behind you is our tool room.
Okay.
So in our communications room, you go on in.
Okay.
I'm still looking for reels to put on this projector so that people know what it is.
Oh, yeah.
So it's one of those old school projectors with the two reels on it, and the speaker up top that used to go with it. We also have, so these two typewriters are our oldest, but I was cleaning them one day with a Q-tip, of course, and realized I thought that this one was broken because there isn't a number 1 in this spot.
Okay.
But I found out later that during that time there wasn't a number 1 on any typewriters because they would just use the lowercase l.
Okay.
And previous versions of the typewriter didn't have 0 on it either because they would just use a capital O.
Wow.
Which makes sense. Right?
Yeah, save on buttons.
Yeah, exactly.
But no number 1. That's pretty cool. For my 7th birthday, I asked for a typewriter.
Mm-hmm. I had a typewriter to learn how to type on. We had computers in school, but of course they weren't accessible at home for a while yet, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So over here, this is one of the first vehicles brought into Burin. They purchased it for $800, him and a business partner, and they intended to use it as a taxi service, so transporting mail and people to where they needed to go. Now, back at that time, so that was the 30s, there weren't any roads here still, so they were basically just going over towpaths and like carriage marks on the road. So some of his early fares are rumored to have had to push the car out of ruts and mud holes and move trees and rocks out of the way so that they could pass to where they were going.
Basically, build the road as you're traveling on it and maintain it.
Yeah.
We had one of these when I was a kid, hauling wood out of the forest, firewood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were. They were workhorses first, and then if there was time and energy left, they entertained children for a bit.
Yes.
Yeah. So some of these tools here, agriculture in the early days of Burin was, as I mentioned before, pretty time-consuming and also difficult. So having to gather enough dirt in places to grow a few potatoes. You know, that was the first challenge. And then, of course, it was the weather. And any, you know, weather events that happen, you'd have to go back and fix everything up. And so it was always a challenge here. But they made it work, and they came up with interesting contraptions like this one that it was made for fertilizer, but the family who owned it actually used it for pesticide.
Okay.
So we also had a cobbler in the area, and we had our first electrician. So, so this brace and bit was used by Mr. Tom Cheeseman, who I think it was in 1942, started bringing electricity through homes here.
So that's how we bored holes in the walls.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't ask me how it made it easier, because to actually try and use that thing is very...
Very awkward.
Yeah, it is.
Old school planers.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a knife cleaner.
Yes. So there are little buffing pads in there that used to buff them down,
Okay.
keep them sharp. Some of the other interesting things. This here was, so before we had those flashing lights on the highway, you know, those yellow flashing lights with construction ahead and whatnot. So before we had those, but sometime after they realized construction zones were a hazard, they came up with this. So this is actually a kerosene torch, right? So it looks like a bobber, very heavy, will not float for sure. But so they used to have these filled with kerosene. They would put it in a mound of sand so it wouldn't roll around, and then torch this so that they could just warn people that there was a construction zone.
Wow. Really, really neat. And this would have been used by the cobbler for building shoes, I guess?
Yeah. Yeah, so Mr. Anderson, he was, let me see now, I haven't told his story in a while. In 1933, at age 16, he started working at the cold storage facility, which is now the oldest Colony Trust building, where we have a lot of our events. Live music tonight if you're interested.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. He had purchased a new sewing machine back in, I think it had to be 62. Spent $1,000 on this sewing machine, which was a nice chunk of change, but he was able to finish up shoes at just a fraction of the time that it used to take him to do it by hand. So it was a good investment on his part.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're now the Burin Sports Hall of Fame.
Okay.
Or pièce de résistance. So this room has been in development for a couple of years now. Last year we inducted almost everybody, save for the last gentleman over here. So dating back to Wayne Hollett, which was, I don't want to get my dates wrong. We'll have to double check that later. But a lot of these people have been up here to see themselves on the wall, which is great. They officially opened it earlier this year, so that's where this ribbon comes from.
Okay.
Here. So we had the mayor and the MHA, a couple of other folks come and cut the ribbon to open the room officially. Now this photo here, my grandfather, who is from St. Lawrence, is actually in there along with his brother and another gentleman that's from St. Lawrence. So back then, St. Lawrence and Burin had a huge rivalry, always and forever, probably dating back to when they were just fishing port communities competing for business. As time went on, it translated into their football leagues, and later on when they would have tournaments and things over in St. Pierre and Miquelon, they would pull some of the best players from each team together and send them over there. And that was the time when they would come together and be side by side as opposed to at each other's throats. So in this mural here was painted with the idea of the old soccer field in mind. So the video that I mentioned downstairs, available through the National Film Board, has a game being played by Burin and St. Lawrence. You know, the artist took a few liberties, so the uniforms are pretty modern. Plus the field is actually flat and green, which was not true for the time. But these hills that surrounded this little flat space, that's where everybody used to sit to watch the game. And over here we have some of our teams throughout the years. This one up top here was our first football team in 1920.
You guys had button-up shirts and trouser shorts?
Yep. Well, they still dress up for team photos. I don't know if they played in those clothing items, but...
He's got a cigarette going?
Oh, yes. Everything before the 60s, somebody had a cigarette or a pipe hanging out of their mouth. So we just have a few other items in here. So these are some of the jackets and jerseys through time. So I mentioned Wayne Hollett was our first inductee up here. This was actually his jacket. And the logo is the design that we use to promote the space.
Oh, wow. I gotta say thank you so much for that presentation. That was very informative and super interesting. Want to introduce yourself for YouTube?
I am not YouTube celebrity material.
Yeah.
My name is Cynthia Ferry, and I'm a museum interpreter here at the Bank of Nova Scotia Museum in Burin.
Wow, thank you so much, Cynthia.
You're
This
so
is
welcome.
great. Thank you.
Either go out that way, or you know, if you want to look out on that step, you have no trouble stepping to the side. It's up to you.
Okay.
You
So-
can back up here.
So Betty let us into the Heritage House. Say hi, Betty.
Hi, welcome to Burin.
And going to show us around the Heritage House across the road.
So where would you like to start?
Right here, I guess.
Right here.
Yeah.
This room was, well, we call it the sewing room because this is where all of our 7 or 8, now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sewing machines are. And they range from the hand crank to the foot pedal powered all the way to one of the first models of the electric Singer sewing machine.
Wow.
So some of the interesting pieces in this room, of course, the craftsmanship for some of these items, you know, is just incomparable to anything that you find out today. So these are all christening gowns here in this corner. Plus, of course, we have 2 wedding gowns that were worn by local women, and there are some things, or at least one thing up here. So this was a shirt made out of the old flour sacks. So it was common for people to reuse a lot of different materials. The flour sacks were convenient because, I mean, you bought flour every week because you had to feed your family, but then you could create clothes for your kids as they were growing.
Wow.
And that's where they came up with, so I can't remember which flour company it was, but they started selling their flour bags with prints on them.
Okay.
So flowers and things. So that when people made clothes out of them, they were
More
a little
fashionable.
bit more dressed up. Yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah, so some of the other things that we had going on here in Burin, we had lots of sheep on the Burin Peninsula, which meant there was lots of wool, which meant there was lots of work to get the wool spun into yarn. So all of those materials are here. I'm told that they used to have what's called carding parties. So these panels here, they would work them kind of like in a crisscross motion to get the dirt and everything out of them, so that eventually it could be spun with the wheel. But it was such a task that used to take so long that they would just have a bunch of ladies over, and that's what they would do, is sit and have a carding party. They would clean the yarn and get its fun, and that was kind of it.
Okay.
So out this way, these are the bedrooms. So we call this one the children's room, although in this house there was only ever one child that lived here. This is just where we put all the toys that we had donated to the museum. So we have this is called a stenograph, which is kind of like an old school viewfinder, if you know what I'm talking about with the Mickey Mouse things.
Okay.
So everything looks 3D. We have a couple of cameras there, as well as some overshoes. This here we call a commode, although it has some other affectionate names as well. And then the chamber pot we have underneath here. So those were typical items to find in most homes. The commode itself was more, I'm going to call it a status symbol. It wasn't quite just that, but not every home had one. Some of these handmade toys, so you see this rocking horse here was hand carved and painted. And the same with this little wheeled walker. So I don't know if you recall from the 1980s, those little walker things that they outlawed because children were going down over the stairs.
Okay.
Myself included.
Yeah.
Well, before that was a thing, so those were like commercially reproduced. This was actually hand built.
Wow.
One of my favorite pieces in here. Oh my goodness. You can edit that out, right? So this kind of first stages of a pinball thing.
Wow.
I tell everybody that, I have the high score and everything, but nobody else is allowed to touch it. So.
Yeah.
But it's still a very cool artifact.
Yes.
So out this way, we have what we believe was the man who built the house was Vincent Reddy. He was also the gentleman that owned one of the first cars I showed you over in the other building there.
Mm-hmm.
He built this house in 1920 for his parents and his sister and himself to live in. And throughout the years, of course, his parents passed on, his sister married off, and he got married and had one son. Now, we believe that this was his sister's room. It's just a small room with lots of bright light in here, but also her picture is hanging on the wall here. So we've kind of fashioned this room after like a live-in nanny, so somebody who is here to look after the children, which is why there are 2 cribs here and a bunch of dolls.
Oh, wow. And original floors.
Oh yes, and ceilings as well. So some of them you can see they're starting to split in places. And not all the ceilings are still like this, so we think that there was probably some water damage throughout the years.
Mm-hmm.
But in most of the house, the ceilings are still original.
Wow.
So in here is the master bedroom. So the size of this bedroom is, it's still pretty impressive for now. So back in 1920, when you had a house this big, people expected that you were going to have 20 children to fill it with, right? But this room really in itself a status symbol just for the size of it. I can even hear my voice echoing in here compared to the rest of the house today.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the items here on the walls, you'll see pictures of royalty, you'll see pictures of religious figures, like the Virgin Mary and the Pope over here. And I'm not sure what these ones depict, but there's a very consistent theme throughout all of them. Some of our favorite pieces in here. So we have these curling tongs. So if you've ever used a hair straightener, So this used to be put in the stove, and then you would have to curl your hair. But of course, it couldn't be too hot. There's no temperature regulator on these things, so you have to be very careful not to burn your hair off.
I would say, yeah.
So aside from the curling tongs, we also have this hair crimper as well. And it's similar technology. I mean, you stick it in the stove and crimp your hair, but not too hot.
Wow. Not something I'd have to worry about, obviously.
No. Yeah, so in this rug here, there are two like it in the house. They are 168 years old. We have hundreds of tourists walk over them every year. And I mean, this one still is red and black, where it's supposed to be red and black.
Wow.
Yeah. So when we talk about them not making things like they used to, this is a really good example of that.
Mm-hmm. Even got a razor blade sharpener. This is where I would get my haircuts. Aquavelva.
Oh, that was the stuff. That's
Yeah.
what you got your ladies.
Yeah, people wore that right up until I was about 10.
Yeah. There's a number of books in here too. So the Sunday at Home, this was built for, or written for Christian families who use Sunday for what it was supposedly intended for, which is to reconnect with your family and have a day of rest. So there are a number of activities in there that theoretically would strengthen the bond with your family.
Okay. Some old school dress.
Now, do you want to do upstairs or downstairs first? Upstairs is the cottage hospital, downstairs is the living room and kitchen.
We'll do upstairs first, I guess.
Upstairs?
Yeah.
Sorry, maybe staircase over here. I think I mentioned to you about the torture device. This guy, I mean a dentist chair. It looks like a torture device. So this is it. Originally when I started working here, it was the first thing you saw when you came up the stairs. So it was a very unsettling feeling. In this room, of course, all about the Burin Cottage Hospital. So you read earlier about the marine dock at Ship Cove. They brought the money together through a lottery. There were a lot of community ventures that took place that happened in the same way. So the cottage hospital, there was also a lottery associated with that to raise money. So back in, I think it was 1931, I believe, was the first lottery. So they raised money for the Burin Cottage Hospital so that we had somewhere to send our sick. And of course, it's at a time of like tuberculosis and polio and smallpox and all of those things happening. So the hospital grew and grew and grew until the 80s when things started to centralize more towards Marystown. So now we moved our healthcare facility is now partway between here and Marystown. But all the cottage hospital stuff was sent over here, I believe, in the late 80s. So the hospital itself operated from 1936 to 1986. There are lots of people still around who went to the cottage hospital at one time or another. There's a few fun trinkets over here. So So you'll see there's an old school breast pump over there. So lots of your female followers are going to recognize that as another torture device.
this one here, you mean?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. There's tracheotomy tubes, old needles, and syringes that we had just from back in the day. We also have further down, so if you've heard of cod liver oil, that's there. If you don't mind me reaching around
Oh,
here,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I'll bring out a couple of those things. It's a tight squeeze in here.
Yeah.
We've had some renovations, so it's not everything is fixed up yet. So cod liver oil, that's the thing that a lot of Newfoundlanders will remember. And then maybe some mainlanders too. I'm not sure how far this actually got out in the world. But the one that got me this year, because I hadn't seen it before, is this beef iron wine, which is exactly what it sounds like. So apparently they used to use a fine sherry, and they would add the extract of lean ground beef. Okay? And I can only imagine that it tastes as delicious as it sounds. But it was used as an iron supplement. But at the same time, I also heard from somebody who once worked at a convenience store that sold beef iron wine, and there were lots of people with alcoholism who would actually purchase it because apparently they wouldn't be as sick the next day.
Okay. Easier for the hangovers.
Yes.
Just like drinking ground beef out of a bottle.
Right. Yeah, we have over here, we have some of our local folk remedies. I don't have them all memorized or anything. There's just some interesting remedies they came up with back in the day.
So if you get a sore throat, you put a piece of flannel and hang it around your neck with fatback pork, and that'll cure your sore throat.
That's
Wow.
well, it's probably cheaper than cough medicine for being
Yeah.
for being honest now. Yeah. And the old metal bedpans here. If you have an older person in your life who's had the pleasure of that experience, it's one that they'll never forget because I mean it was freezing.
Yeah. Oxen shoes. Butter churning devices. An old organ.
I love it, but I can't compete with it. There's no volume button.
Yeah.
That is one of my favorite pieces of it. So, and as you can imagine, music was one of the things that a lot of people enjoyed back in the day. Well, as far back as the mid 1700s, but certainly into, the 40s, which is the era of this whole instruments here. Not every home at the time had two organs or pianos, but we did have a lot of donations from the community, so we do have doubles and triplicates of things, like the radios and the pianos.
Wow.
Yeah, and like a lot of homes at that time, very focused around religion. Christianity in particular, there were a lot of Christian groups here. So we have this Bible came directly from the church. I think it was from the United Church, which is the one that you see over across the water in Collins Cove.
So it actually had a lock?
No, so this would have been the one that was up at the front of the altar.
Okay.
Or at one time it was very well preserved, but I do show this sometimes just because it's so detailed for something that's printed. There's something about old school printing.
Mm-hmm. And this was used to carry it, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, generally it wouldn't be transported anywhere. It would have stayed within the church.
Okay, yeah.
Because it was something that, you know, the priest and the clergy had access to.
Wow.
Now, I spoke about Vincent Reddy, who was a man who had this house built. So this is him over the mantle here.
Okay.
So in 1920, he paid $5,000 to have this house built by a master builder that he hired. There are a few rumors floating around, though, that it wasn't all paid in actual money. It may have also been paid in illegal alcohol at the time, because of course it was a prohibition area and there were lots of things going on. The master builder allegedly had an issue with alcohol. So one of the rumors that are circulating is, you know, in some centennial homes where they have that large post at the bottom of the staircase, where sometimes they'll store architectural plans to the house.
Okay.
In some of the older homes, yeah. So it's rumored that here, there's actually an empty 60-ouncer in this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, as I mentioned, there was only one family that ever lived here and one child who ever lived in the home. So it was Vincent's son, Jimmy Reddy, and he's up here. This is the picture. So he later married and he stayed in this home until he moved on to a long-term care facility. And he actually only passed away not quite 2 years ago.
Okay.
So he was a gentleman that sold the house to the town for use as a museum.
So this one here on the door, this has to do with the Orangeman's Lodge?
Oh, I wondered where that was. Sometimes I'm looking at this stuff for so long. Yeah, I guess it does. There was, if I recall, there are remnants of the old Orangeman's Lodge over near Ship Cove, but I couldn't tell you exactly where.
Mm-hmm. They had some Orangeman's Lodges in Trinity.
Oh, yes, okay.
And that's where I learned about those. I didn't hear of them prior to that.
Oh, okay, Orangeman's Day.
Yeah.
That's like
Yeah, that's a holiday, yeah.
yeah. That's, if we're being honest, I just made the connection. So.
Yeah.
So this is your typical dining room for 1920s affluent family. The furniture here is not original to the house, and most of it is not. And even this chair over here was salvaged from a shipwreck from 1925 from the SS Argos. That incident in particular, all of the crew managed to get to shore when the ship ran aground. But then local fishermen volunteer themselves for recovery efforts. And in doing that, the first 2 days went fine, but on the third day the boat shifted and took 4 of those volunteer fishermen with it to the
Wow.
bottom of the ocean. It's another one of those stories that I tell because I feel like they deserve something.
Yes.
We do have our old phone book over there. So some of, now it's the whole Burin Peninsula, right? Now we had lots of people living here, 1956. Not all of them had a phone number. And if they did have a phone number, it was like 2 or 3 digits long. So.
Wow. Cool. If you wanted to tell your buddy, it was just 517. Easy to remember.
Yeah. No more of these 10-digit phone numbers. What's that? So this is every man's kitchen. The wooden Newfoundland with the spoons on it. You had a radio. There was probably some tobacco somewhere. One of these, what do they call them? Fainting chairs. You know, where my pop used to rest up after the day. And then of course the wooden chairs with several coats of paint. This tablecloth in particular brings back memories of my grandmother. But in this kitchen we have lots of the things that were available before electricity was officially brought into Burin. So we have things like the old wood stove here and all the tools associated with that. We have this bathtub, which, yes, it's not very big, but it is still, that's what you bathed your whole self in.
In this here?
In this here, yeah.
Wow.
It got all the important bits in the water, and then you just dealt with the rest.
Yeah.
Here in the closet, we have the 1940s version of a washer-dryer combo. So you'd spin it in the wash basin, and then you'd wring it through on that dryer up top.
Wow.
I think this might be my favorite room in the house.
Yeah.
Yeah, I talk about it a lot. And
I'm
this
sure
is,
there's lots of homes around Newfoundland that still look like this.
yeah,
Hey?
lots of, well, I'm sure that if I went looking for them, I would find those chairs from my grandmother's table.
Yeah.
She did upgrade after a while, but those are the ones I remember from my youth.
Really neat. The old cheese grater.
Yeah. So you're finding stuff today that I haven't looked at in a couple of years.
Here's the old clothes iron.
Yes.
Wow. This is awesome, Cynthia. So that's everything, is it?
That is everything.
And what are these? What are these used for?
That's, I guess it's not everything. these are the butter churns.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're, I mean, pretty simple, like most butter churns you see. So you put the milk in, you churn, or the cream rather. Churn until it's butter. And these molds here, they were actually used to stamp your butter. So if you were somebody who made butter, you would carve out your own design, stamp your butter so that when you were giving it to somebody, they knew where it came from.
Wow. Really cool. Well, folks, what do you think of all that? Somebody hit the like button, hit the subscribe, comment down below what was your favorite part of the tours, both in the Heritage House and over at the old Bank of Nova Scotia Museum. Is that what it's called, Cynthia?
Yes.
Yeah? And once again, thank you very much, Cynthia. That was a wonderful presentation.
Oh, thanks. You're welcome.
Alright folks, now we're over in Ship Cove, which is right next to Burin. And we got this really old house here. Also got a fishing stage over here. It's about to fall into the water. Just cruising down the road here, guys, and I saw a bunch of quartz veins in the rock face. And so I jumped out because every time I see a quartz vein, it makes me think of gold. And I know not every quartz vein is gold bearing, but if there's any geologists watching, what do you guys think of this formation here? We've got a small vein here, we've got a bigger vein that narrows down. Let's look at some of the mineralization here. And does this look like something that would be gold bearing? I mean, it's super pretty, I know that. I see some iron up there. And they say gold rides an iron horse. There's quite a bit of this quartz all throughout here as they dug this out. What do you think, guys? Am I holding a $200 specimen here? Or is it more like 2 cents? Couple more veins in the rock face over here. Like here's a nice specimen here. You can see the quartz right on the granite. And then granite again. I'm going to keep this one actually. This is a good paperweight for my desk at the YouTube studio back home. What do you guys think so far? I mean, I'm pretty interested. A lot of history here, a lot of cool things to see, and really quiet area. She was saying there's live music tonight down by the wharf at the oldest, can't even remember the name of it now, but there's oldest colonial trust building or something like that. Burin is a cool spot to come see, that's for sure. Check out these crisscrossing quartz veins here. Really beautiful stuff. Were they just looking for the rock here, or were they testing this to see if it was viable to mine? We're gonna head down that way now and see what we can see. We're just a little further down the road here. And what I spotted was the Zion United Church Cemetery. Also see a big quartz boulder at the top of that ridge and a major quartz vein over here. Check out these old wrought iron gates. Seems like a really old cemetery, so just gonna have a look and see. Sarah Vigas, 1922. Never heard that last name here, actually. Seems like a really old cemetery, though. In loving memory of Freddie Darling. In loving memory of Freddie, darling child of James and Sarah Vigas, who died August 9th, 1887, aged 7 days. Poor soul only lived to be 1 week old. Rest in peace, Freddie. Samuel Jarvis, Benjamin Jarvis, 1913 it looks like. Elizabeth, beloved wife of Richard Beasley, died in 1890. Check this out, guys. I found a little section here. It looks like all Masonic style graves. They must have been Masonic Masons themselves. In loving memory of W.E. Bishop, who was lost in the Florizel disaster at Cappahayden near Cape Race in the early morning of February 24th, 1918, aged 48 years, a faithful friend, a husband dear, a parent kind, no longer here. Great is the loss we here sustain, but hope in heaven we meet again. And that's the Freemason square and compass. And he's got a G there. Another one over there for RM. Lieutenant Corporal RM Winter. 1st Newfoundland Regiment killed in action in 1916 at Beaumont Hamel in France. And then this one here is it's a Masonic symbol, and I can't remember the name of it now, but they're very famous. There's one in the States, there's one in France. There's another one here in loving memory of Daniel Bishop, a native of Bridgeport, England. Died in July 2nd, 1921. Aged 70 years. These almost look like newer headstones that were brought in and placed here. Large piece of quartz right in the cemetery here. Looks like some major mineralizations. And we got the blueberries. They are ripe. The third week to last week in August. It's blueberry time. I think, guys, we'll go down for one more look at the harbour down here. And we'll have to get back on the road again. Hopefully there's more stuff to see though. I'm kind of having fun. Comment down below if you're enjoying this, guys. Alright, so folks, now we're across the river, across the harbour from where we were at the museum, which will be in that little cove straight across. And Cynthia brought me down here to the wharf. That's just an absolutely beautiful area too. They have live music going on there tonight. And here on the wharf we got a boat. It's cut in half. Built on cribs. Nice and wide slipway. What a beautiful spot. So much like Trinity. You've got little islands out here. Cynthia was saying they have kayaks here. You can rent kayaks and just cruise around this whole bay. Might have to come back and rent a kayak from Cynthia. Get a coffee at her cafe and come on out here, cruise around for the day. Lots of times the water could be just like this, just like a sheet of glass. It's a sheltered little harbor here. We're over at the United Church. This was originally a Zion church. It's built right on the side of a mountain here. They have a little sign here, erected in 1904. Let's check out the view. So there's a cabin out there, eh? Several cabins out there. I think they were saying this is Burin Island. This is Little Burin Island. And there's a couple others there as well. I might be wrong on the name of those islands, folks. Let me know in the comments. There's a couple of cabins right out there. The wharf. As you can see, this is an ideal location for kayak expeditions. Wow. What do you think of all that, guys? Is this a good enough excursion or should I keep going? Let me know. Hit the like button. We're down in Burin, Newfoundland, the southern coast, down on the Burin Peninsula of Newfoundland, Canada. And it's a foggy Wednesday afternoon. And we're just out loving life, touring around, being a tourist in our own province here. Thank you for watching. Hit subscribe if you're not already in the community here. We're going to 1 million subscribers here right away. We're already at 567 or something like that. So as you can see, we're becoming extremely famous and successful overnight. And I owe it all to you guys. Thank you very much. And I had fun making this video. Hopefully you enjoyed watching it. We'll see you on the next one. Deep Dive Survivor. As we're here at low tide in a little town called Jean de Bay. The ducks are coming down river. This is like a tidal river. And so that's why we see seaweed in this river. I even see a sea urchin down here. Should be careful because this is like quicksand almost. Sea urchin right here in the river, right? So it's got to be like a tidal river. And you can see the water level on these fishing stages and all that here. Beautiful little ducks. Come to say hello. And the beach is amazing here, folks. Look at this. Jean de Bay, Newfoundland. It's before Maritime, if you're on your way south on the Burin Peninsula. Really small town, but super picturesque. Nice sandy beach. And the view is amazing. You can see shore right on down. That's probably St. Pierre and Miquelon right there, actually, out on the horizon. Hit the like button, you guys. Hit subscribe. See you on the next one. Deep Dive Survivor.